Good morning, everyone. This is Chris Koropati from Deming Land. With me is my colleague Manish. He'll be joining in a few minutes. Today's session is quality is everyone's responsibility in the supply chain. We want to take the opportunity to thank you for joining the session today. We roughly have about 3 sections in this session. In the beginning, we are going to do a little bit of quick housekeeping, how to use Zoom, webinar facilities. We'll introduce ourselves fairly briefly. What we will also cover is about some of the challenges that we've observed when organizations are practicing quality management. So that'll make up the first section. In the second section, we will really highlight how workflow-based approaches for quality management are proving to be very effective. We'll pick one case study and go through it fully so that you can see and appreciate how workflows can support simple to intricate quality management processes. And we'll do a quick demo, a few of the scenarios that are pretty commonly used or applicable within many industries. And in the last 10 minutes, we will, open up the session for Q&A. So in terms of basic housekeeping with Zoom webinars, as we are going through the session, it is very likely that you will have some questions. You can always type in the question right away in the Q&A bar. So if you, very likely this is how your screen is looking. So if you select the Q&A bar, you can type in the question. One of the advantages, if you can type in the Q&A bar, is we'll have a record of all the questions and we can answer the questions towards the end. And if you are not able to answer any of the questions, we will definitely follow up via email. Once the session is finished, Zoom does provide us with a recording. We will share the presentation as well as the recording with all the registrants. Okay. So with that, a quick introduction about Deming Lab. So we are based out of California, but we do have offices in different cities in the country. We primarily work with industries and organizations that are very heavy in manufacturing design and often work a lot with their supply chain partners, whether it be third-party manufacturer or contract manufacturers or part manufacturers, component system manufacturers. So where the emphasis on quality is very high. Many of us came from the industry and we have quite a bit of experience in supply chain and NPI and related quality management processes. And of course, with workflows, while we do support several of the areas, including supply chain and new product introductions, one of the places where we have seen our workflow management system that we are going to show today has proven to be very effective is actually in quality. It comes very close to making quality is everyone's responsibility a reality in the organization and the supply chain if the workflows are done well and they're being used. Okay, so we'll see those examples today in the session. I'm Chris Koropati. My colleague is also on the call, Manish. We both have manufacturing and supply chain expertise as well as technology, 20 plus years. So we have seen what happens on the plant floor to what does it take to design quality products and what are the systems that can best enable organizations to achieve quality management excellence. And of course, many of you will probably appreciate this finding. What we do know, everyone knows in the quality world is that cost of poor quality is much, much higher than cost of achieving good quality. Right. And in that sense, if you really look at some of the numbers, and the numbers, especially, we coming from automotive industry, have seen the impact of poor quality, across the product life cycle. There could be lots of production issues, post-production launch issues, But the one number that shows up on every balance sheet, especially if you're a manufacturer with warranty, is the cost of warranty. That's a very direct indicator of things failing somewhere, right? Things haven't been taken care of fully, so problems show up at the customer. And it's actually the worst time to have a quality issue when the product is being used, right? So warranty costs are a big line item and a direct impact on profitability of companies. In addition, one of the things that you can see here is the cost of quality across the overall product lifecycle or the company span of operations. As you can see, I mean, it's in one industry here, medical device industry, that McKinsey has published. I mean, there is a cost of what we call achieving quality, which is to prevention and appraisal. But that is just a fraction of the direct cost of poor quality, right? And this includes, it's much, much higher by the time everything is, the whole product life cycle is realized. And in addition, one of the things that we've also found, especially when you're working with medical device industry, this is a research report that the medical device industry consortium published, where they have looked at what does it cost, and corrective and preventive action process is one of the central processes within medical device industry. And what does it cost for participating organizations? And they found it to be 1% of companies' revenues. I mean, that's, we're not talking small money anymore, right? So the costs and the burdens are pretty high. And what we've also learned, when we are working with a variety of industries, is it is not uncommon among quality management professionals to feel that quality management is approached as we need to have good documents. It's almost seen as a documentation exercise in some cases, okay? And quality is the responsibility of just quality department. If something goes wrong, everybody points the finger at quality department. And the other thing that is also an obstacle here is stakeholders. And there are many, many stakeholders for quality have limited visibility and control to ensure quality issues are addressed in a timely and effective manner. We'll see one example why that is supremely important. Okay. And so if you're looking at quality management, a lot of times, we have seen this repeatedly when people talk about quality, they always look at quality manuals, right? Do we have one? Is every item, every aspect of the quality standard that we are supposed to follow, whether it be a company standard or industry standard or ISO 9000, things like that. Do we have a manual? Do we have documented processes? Do we have all the procedures highlighted, defined? And we have work instructions. So a lot of emphasis on documentation. And of course, if you do all of that well, you should have good records, right? Record keeping. So this tends to be where a lot of energy is spent. And of course, if you look at the whole product life cycle or the span of your organization's operations, there are lots of stakeholders involved that directly influence and see the results of quality or poor quality, right? However, we have often seen that the responsibility of quality or the performance of it is only, really is given over to the quality management department, or that's one department seen as you're responsible for it, right? So normally, it doesn't work this way. And of course, there are many, many, many quality events that can come from customers to manufacturing and supply chain. All of those have impact on what happens, right? In terms of poor quality. What is a challenge for many of the stakeholders, not only just for quality professionals, but other stakeholders within the organization, is that what happens if there is a quality event, and are we doing all the things that are required to close it out, to understand what the issues are, and put up a plan and execute a plan on eliminating that quality issue once and for all, right? So there's very limited visibility and control over that, what happens after a poor quality event. And when we looked at why is this a challenge, we 4 reasons that stand out. One is, even though you have a very well documented process, procedures, QMS procedures, actually doing it, especially if the workflow or the process cuts across many functions, is pretty hard, and you will see why. Another big reason tends to be cross-functional teams, and the systems that they use are fairly disconnected, right? There's, regardless of how much collaboration happens, there are still some unseen silos and coordination issues that tend to be pretty persistent. The other one, the last one, is falling through the cracks, things, especially if the processes are very, very cross-functional and there are lots of related activities, tasks that need to be done. There's always a chance of someone dropping the ball, it's not passing a baton. I don't know how many people remember this one catch, Welker dropping it. We just have that picture, but it just happens, right? It's natural for people to, if it requires a lot of coordination, some things just drop off. And of course, involving supply chain is pretty difficult. Having that engagement across the board with supply chain partners primarily happens via email, and it's pretty hard to accomplish, especially as part of a quality process. It's always disconnected when you're working with suppliers. And what we've found out is one approach that seems to be effective is to use a cross-functional workflow as a method to address some of the quality processes. And there are a few things that are important and make it possible that a workflow-based approach can be a real solution for some of the challenges, right? One is if you can allow workflows to be created, started by anyone in any system. One of the things that you want to spread the gospel is that, hey, you can create an issue, right? You can start something if you see there to be a problem across the organization and the supply chain. Once things start, you want to proactively involve right people at the right time. And where needed, include the supply chain, right? So, supply chain, some issues are possibly caused due to supply chain partners, and you need to bring them in as soon as possible as part of the workflow, right? And the other thing that is pretty important is, you do have to integrate the tools that people commonly use for quality directly into the way people are working as part of the workflow. And of course, where needed, you need to integrate with systems. You have lots of ERP systems, manufacturing execution, design systems, supply chain systems. They should be able to connect to, and provide the follow-on or information, take the information and be connected to the overall process. So if we enable these types of facilities as part of the workflows, the QMS, the reality of or making quality is everyone's responsibility, is closer than ever. Okay, and one of the things that we've seen is workflows, especially if they are company specific, if you have a process and you want to enable that during a workflow, they tend to naturally support or keep all the people, processes, and systems in sync. That's one big advantage. If you can define them the way that you actually do quality-related workflows within your organization. And it's also a very good idea to integrate the tools that are used as part of the quality management processes and the data related to that, whether it be parts or FMEAs or fishbones or countermeasures. directly within that workflow process. We'll see examples. And if you can, of course, when you're supporting a process quality management, many functions are involved to make it real. So you need to bring in different stakeholders as part of the workflow in a very, very proactive manner. And of course, and if you do find that some of the quality management processes do need to extend to the supply chains, especially suppliers, you need to be able to do that very naturally. There cannot be a break in the process. We've repeatedly seen if the moment you break something, the coordination effort is quite high, and more often than not, things will be forgotten, or at least will not be done in a very timely manner. Okay, and here are some examples of the types of workflows, the types of assessments, and tools that you need to be able to bring together as part of the workflow, so that you can actually make the quality is everyone's responsibility a reality. Okay, so we've seen this approach work very well. What we are going to do now is take a case study and see how that is supported as a workflow, as a connected workflows, and the different things that actually happen as part of those workflows. Okay, so the case study here it's a pretty complex case study, and if you're in food manufacturing or generally manufacturing, and designing some things, you have a distribution network, you have a supply chain, you have stores, you have other partners that are buying your product and selling it on behalf. You may have customers that need to be in the loop sometimes. It can be pretty the case of if some issue is found, how do you scan the overall supply chain and take actions, right? And it's very, very complicated that we've seen in our experience. So the overall case study here is, let's say someone in your manufacturing plant finds an issue with the product. Immediately the cross-functional team comes together and looks at the issue, and finds out that this issue is also going to be or affecting other serial numbers of the same product, right? Some batch manufacturing or some type of group of products that have the same issue. The next thing because they found out a little bit later, some of the product has already gone out into the supply chain network. They need to find out where they are. It could be in other manufacturing plants. It could be in distribution centers. It could be in the final stores, if your own stores, or other third-party stores. And once you find out where they are, you need to communicate. And if the entities are within your span, you need to immediately move all of them into the product hold area to isolate them from the actual distribution chain. Communicate to the people in the network, right? And what immediate and disposition actions they need to take. Make sure they actually complete them. Then once they're completed, verify and close it out, right? This is how the process is actually defined. Now, in reality, what actually happens is these are the steps that are involved. The current, let's say we look at the procedure currently, right? So product issue, with anybody within the plant can submit a product issue. The investigation is done immediately, and they look at, hey, are there any other serial numbers that are affected by the same issue? If there are, what are they, right? And then you would look into your ERP system and find out where those serial numbers are located currently, and initiate either transactions or communication to say, hey, just move those serial numbers out of the shipment chain, put them in the quality hold area. And once it is done, you start to need to find out who are all the people that we can work with in those locations to take some initial actions. And once, as a team, you find out what can be disposition. And disposition doesn't have to be just, hey, we need to scrap, right? We can also do some repairs. We can make some adjustments, or bring it back to some other location and fix it and they send it back. So lots of disposition options are available. And then make sure that we work with that team that is responsible, that is at the location that can actually do it. And they make sure they complete it and verify it and document it. So what we have seen is this is can be 3 to 6 months project. In some cases, depending upon how deep the distribution is, where the serial numbers are located, it can be like 20 to 50 people involved. If it is not done in a timely manner, a very high chance of defective product making it to the customers. And that's 10 times more expensive than fixing something within your boundary. And if you're not done in a timely and effective manner, and once and for all address the issue, it can be very expensive and damaging to the brand, because the effect will persist, the issue will persist, and poor products are being actually manufactured. So this is how the current challenges are, and this is not an easy situation to work with, right? So you need to improve upon it. So what we've done is actually set up a workflow-based approach, standardized it, right, where anybody in the organization from the plants and DCs onwards can create a product issue, where the investigation is done very quickly to find out all the affected product as a first step, right? Load all the serial numbers, and then the workflow actually connects to SAP and gets out, where are they located? All the serial numbers, and automatically initiates the movements within the SAP and warehouse management system to quickly move all this product to the hold area, because then these are many of them are automated transactions, so you can initiate from workflows themselves, right? So this step can be so quick that there is a very little chance of product still in the normal places where customers can pick it up, or warehouse teams can pick it up and put it into the customer distribution chain, right? So the first thing to do is quickly move them out of the normal distribution flow and put them into a hold area. This needs to happen as quickly as possible, right? Once that is done, we need to start communicating to all the people within those plants and DCs and stores to initiate initial actions, right, to communicate about them. And once they complete the initial actions, give them the actual disposition action. And then once they finish those disposition actions, they will be verifying it, take some pictures and send them, and then you close it off, right? So the goal is to really take, what was taking several months and with some high risk of poor product making into the distribution channel, and quickly doing all the things you can do. All of that stuff is avoided, and the cycle times are much lower, right? So the risk is very low. So this is a scenario that they've implemented. So what I can do is I will give you a small demo of how that is done, so you can see how that comes together. So when you look at the solution here, so we have lots of different workflows, right? These could be your company-specific process, or certain of these workflows are industry standard workflows like APQP programs or PPAPs, for example, first article inspections. These are pretty common industry standard approaches that you can adopt. The other thing that we also have is how do you extend certain workflows directly to suppliers? They can be started off in other places, but extended to suppliers. And of course, there are other areas where, when there are quality events, what we call them to be, generally a lot of the quality events start at the customer side, right? That you capture them and follow through with appropriate quality management processes. So let's start with the product issue, right? So we said anyone in the organization and the supply chain can initiate this. So as a stakeholder, I'm in a manufacturing plant, and I'm in Fremont. We have a product issue, wiring, piping, welding issue, and heat pump. Okay. So in the plant, or kind of know it's like maybe it's like a finished good, but that can be determined later on, right? So we don't have to worry about it. I'm reporting this issue. Let's just say I also have some pictures of that, and this can also be done from a phone. Okay, so I got this picture, attach it, close it, right, and then submit it. So in terms of reporting an issue, we are done, right? You want to make it as simple as possible for the person or people that are reporting across the supply chain to initiate this workflow. So I'm submitting it. Determine the material type. The reason why we sometimes have to determine material type is I will show you why that is important, because so every workflow in the solution is described by three things. One is, how does the workflow, activities, and how does it actually progress? So we determine the material types. There are people that will come and review the product submission. So when we say cross-functional team, we actually have different key stakeholders that are responsible for this process. They do specific activities, right? For example, material type can be done by the system or by a person, right? Whereas product issue review is actually done by, depending upon the type of material, it could be finished goods quality coordinator or service parts, supplier quality, or purchasing managers, right? So you can have any person depending upon the type of material that can do it. Of course, whether to hold product or move it out is done by the quality engineer. So you have different people coming together and actually performing different workflow activities as a workflow, right? So it's everything here is cross-functional. There is no, I will just report it and forget about it, right? It pulls in the right people at the right time, and then they progress, they continue with the workflow. So in this case, so determine material type, it is assigned to me, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it. It's finished good. I'm going to complete it. So now it's actually gone to the purchasing manager because of the finished good. It bought by somebody else, right? So they will be reviewing this product issue submission, and once they look at it, right? If I log in as a purchasing manager, the first thing is an email is sent out to the purchasing manager. So I just got it, 8/29. Saying you have an email notification sent to you to perform workflow activity, review product issue submission for the process, right? So we know the material is the plant. We still don't know anything about the issue to hold or not. So this is how people are proactively pulled in to do the specific activity within the workflow that you have described that follows your organization's process. Right, so let's go back to the app. I'm going to log in as, who is this? Purchasing manager, right? So let's look at, come in as purchasing and see how it looks, right? So generally they'll just select that link and they'll come in since I'm logging in here. So here is my activity says, hey, you have to review the product issue submission. So when I look at it, it's okay. I see the picture, seems to be an issue. Yes, it's something that we need to address. Okay, I'm going to accept it. I could also ask the requester to submit more information with some, maybe you need additional information, right? So for now, we are good. I'm going to accept it. And as far as the workflow is concerned, we are done, right? So here now it is at hold assessment. The quality engineer needs to be able to look at it, right? So if I log in as quality engineer, then I will be doing the actual hold assessment and then look at it. So I'm going to come back to this workflow as a requester. Since I'm an admin, I can do a few things to continue with the flow. Let me look at this product issue. So I'm going to work on behalf of the quality engineer. Okay, this will actually be done by the quality engineer, but since I'm an admin, I can act for him. I'll say, yeah, I think it seems serious enough issue. Just issue the hold. And I've also looked at the investigation. So we need to look at these three serial numbers. Okay, serial 124 and 127. Okay, so that's it. And so I'm in this step, hold assessment. Okay, and then we are done. As an activity, I will submit it. And it will just go ahead and move on to the next steps. So one of the things that we did here is it's an initiate hold, right? Because we said hold assessment as yes, we need to initiate the hold for these three items, right? And normally, if you were at this point and if you were practicing in the as-is approach, you would be calling the people, initiate the, send out emails, find out where these materials are. You have to go through that very, very, very manual process, reach out to, wherever these locations are, and then start to communicate the initial actions and the disposition actions, right? So what we have done here is to kick off that product hold process. As in this workflow, when we say initiate hold, it actually kicked off this product hold process, which, if you look at it, it has its own workflow cycle. Some of it is very automated and some of it is very, it pulls in all the people together. So if you look at this, it calls SAP, it finds out where all the serial numbers are located, and where it can find, it'll immediately move them into, from unrestricted, which is unrestricted is what people pick up from a stock and then ship it to customers. And then it'll move it to the blocked storage areas. It'll look at which plants are, where the locations are. It'll create the plant action record so that people are communicated. And then it starts the collaboration process with the individual plants, right? So let's look at one of the examples we already have. I've already set up one that we can open. Okay, so this is, MAT123. These are the serial numbers, right? That came out of that, when we selected this, get set product hold, get impacted stores, right? So we ran through all of those checks, and it happens immediately the moment the product hold is created. It found out all the serial numbers, where are all the serial numbers located, moved it out of the unrestricted area to quality hold area, by interacting with the ERP system and warehouse management system. And then it found out, hey, the people that are in plant A, you need to send an email to this guy. For C100, you need to send an email to this guy with this. action instruction, initial action, right? Now, when it sends an email to this person here, so let's take Chris Gorpati here at CambrianLab.net. What does he see? Right now, we need to start working. There could be like 20 plants here, 20 plants and 50 stores. All of them will get this email saying, okay, this is what you need to do as an initial action. Like tighten the wiring harness. And when they come here, I'm going to submit. So I'm logging in as the person that has to do this work, right? So I got this initial action instruction. I know which are the 2 serial numbers that belong to my part. What I'm going to do then, because I've been communicated, all of this happened more or less, in a matter of minutes. None of that emailing and finding out and right. Okay, I'm communicated, so I'll just go ahead and some stores and other places people have to actually go ahead and do it physically, right? So they'll do it and they'll say, yes, I've completed the initial action. The date it was done by this person, response, moved it out, fix the wiring harness based on instruction. And you can send instructions, videos, documents, everything, how it should be done. So this is just the initial action, okay? I'll save. And so if I, as a coordinator of this product whole, if I now go ahead and open this, I can see, initial action has been completed. Yes, right? So it's very, very, very convenient and much faster than the process that used to be in place because we've set up a workflow, or rather connected workflows that interoperate with various systems, get the people together automatically, communicate to them, let them finish the work and head it back to you, right? So once all those initial actions are finished, now then you can move on to what should be the actual disposition actions. It could be disposition action, could be now you can bring it back from, once the fixes are done, bring it back from hold to unrestricted area, so you can continue moving to the send them to the customers. So just to give you an example, I know it's a long one, but the power of workflows to accomplish what used to be a very, very tedious and risky process to much faster, and gives the visibility and control to all the stakeholders that need to be involved and responsible for this. Okay, so with that, what I will do is go into the next part. Okay, so we've looked at one of the examples. I can also show a few more demos because I do want to cover some key principles that we like to highlight. Right, one of the things that is very, very challenging for a lot of organizations is a very what we call to be, no quality issue left behind, right? So there are lots of quality events that happen across the organization and in the supply chain. And you need a very efficient process to understand what they are and really see what the severity impact of those can be, and follow through with any actions that need to be performed, right, to close them out or to address the issue once and for all, many times, right? So when we look at that, what we have done is actually designed what do we call a universal quality issue workflow, right? So if you look, I'm looking at this universal quality issues workflow, there are many, many types of what we call events that result in quality issues, and that someone as a team needs to review, understand what the impact is, and what do we do afterwards, right? It could be a customer complaint or poor customer review, right? So that's why we call them field failure or adverse event report. Many of them come from customers, but you could also include supply chain events and internal events that require understanding what is going on and what should we do afterwards. So we call this no quality issue left behind, right? So it's a workflow that pools all the quality events, that are happening across the organization. So if I look at, for example, quality events coming from customers, right? Quality events coming from manufacturing, engineering, and so on. So if there's a pure customer review, right? We need to do something about it as an organization. It cannot just be a customer service team understands it and puts into the customer service system and forgotten. If it is serious enough, we need to consider it as a quality issue and deal with it. So let's look at what this quality issue, what we call no quality issue left behind, workflow accomplishes, right? So if you look at it, there are, I'm going to do a search so that we look at what the source events are. So customer complaint, poor customer review, adverse event report. So let's pick a poor customer review here, right? So the source of this quality issue is a poor customer review. And they've said, works great. The unit is non-operational. $150 for a few months of ice is not good. I would not recommend this unit. Guess what happens if someone were to write this type of review on Amazon? The sales are going to either dramatically drop or pretty much come to a halt. I mean, this is like a serious issue that need to be dealt with immediately, right? So what this quality issue deals with is it looks at, hey, is the customer affected? Gives the assessment. So there is a workflow that is kicked off. We call this quality issue workflow. It has as an assessment. People determine, what is the follow-on action, and once the follow-on action is approved by the quality board, depending upon the type of CAPA needs to be done, it will create the appropriate corrective and preventive action. Some cases, you don't need even corrective preventive action, it's just close it out. So all of these, what we call these quality events go through this, what we call a filter, right? So that people are informed, people make a decision, and what should we do about it? So this is a problem big enough that you need to really address some things, right? And it could be, it's coming from a customer review, but it's something that you need to look at. So let's look at one example that we have a quality issue and what happens as a follow-on activity, right? So we have this external CAPA. This is something that's already been processed. So the workflow, if you notice, it's all completed. It actually created a corrective preventive action process. And if you look at it, it's a pressure line in some cases is getting kinked or obstructed. Customer is affected. Harm is yes. Severity is critical. While the occurrence probably is remote, we need to address this potential severity, right? And the immediate action also is something that they looked at training in the field and also looked at design changes, potential corrective action. So implementation priority is very high. So this is the assessment that people did based upon the adverse event report, right? And it is done as a team with different people involved, including engineering, R&D, right, quality, and all the roles that are involved in this workflow. And if you look at it, it actually created an external CAPA process. There's a team that was set up, and this is a very long, actually pretty intricate workflow in the sense that there are lots of different steps involved in it. And by the way, this workflow, the way it is being shown, can be exactly the way you describe or your quality manual describe should be done, right? So in terms of adopting your quality management process, you can just take it as it is and implement it. No need to make any changes to your QMS procedures. You're just describing it as a workflow and making it real for people, so people can come in and actually proactively do it. So there is no more of, hey, is it going to be done or not? It will be done according to the document and the process that is outlined. So here, if you look at it, there's still at this point, it's at root cause analysis stage. You can see the different sections. So the teams are already in place. There's risk assessment done. Some root cause analysis is done. Within the workflow itself, they use what is called the fishbone approach to understand what are the different aspects, right? Cause categories, and what are the different root causes, and also outline the corrective preventive actions, right? What should be done. There was an ECR that was released out of it, and also potentially a supplier corrective action that maybe needs to be done, right? So we haven't decided yet. And there is also a document, an SOP update that needs to be done. That is actually being initiated. So as you can see that, what needs to be done as part of the corrective and preventive action will be executed directly from here, right? All the tools are in place, and the follow-on processes that also can be done directly from here. And you can see this, right? The corrective preventive action process and the quality issue. So you can see that engineering change request is actually being prepared out of that CAPA. Right, so all of these different connections, if you go back to where everything started, right? Where everything started was this quality issue. Actually, this quality issue came out of an external adverse event, right? So if you look at this graphically, quality issue kicked off the corrective preventive action, which actually kicked off the engineering change review. So all the handoffs are being done and driven by these connected workflows, that's what we call. And the right people are involved at the right time, and nothing is left to chance anymore, right? And that's some of the key characteristics that we've seen required, especially in mission critical type of industries where quality is very, very important. Okay, so and then of course, when we looked at supply chain engagement, suppliers are naturally part of the workflows. So we do see suppliers coming in and doing some of the activities. So many of these can be kicked off by suppliers, right? So a non-conformance kicked off a supplier corrective action, an audit kicked off a supplier corrective action. So suppliers can also participate. They actually have their own portal view. So when they come in, so let me refresh this. All the activities in which they are part of are, they come in and perform those activities, right? So if I look at the corrective action due to non-conformance, this is actually something that I can, what are the actions that I'm going to be doing? Will this be done? If there are any verification documents that I should be doing, I can finish it here as part of the workflow, right? This non-conformance and this supplier corrective action workflow is coming to the suppliers, right? And they can complete it. So suppliers are also equal part. I mean, we see them, suppliers, as an extension of your organization, and any and all workflows that you've described here can be extended to suppliers. And based upon what is extended to suppliers, they will be able to see them and participate in them. The same way your internal organizations are participating, they also get a notification, and they can actually go and perform those those activities, right? So if it's an audit, they can go in and answer. Depending upon the type of workflow, they can answer appropriately. Okay, so finally, there was some interest in industry standard. We also support several industries on some of the key processes that they use. A good example would be advanced product quality planning, right? So advanced product quality planning or variations of this are used everywhere, like in automotive primarily, but also in aerospace and other semiconductor machinery. They're all adopting this as a way to institute a very systematic way of designing and manufacturing products. Right. So if you look at advanced product planning, there are many elements of advanced product planning. Depending upon what is important for you, you can pick and choose. But fundamentally, it institutes a phase gate approach, which is what the industry recommends. Phase one is, if you look at it, plan and define. Phase two is product design and development. And within this phase, all the different activities that need to be done, right? And that can be accomplished as a workflow, right? And if you actually do release certain things, you can also connect different workflows directly to these activities of APQP and perform those as workflows. Okay, and same thing for PPAP. PPAP is a pretty popular workflow. It can be initiated by suppliers, or you can initiate them and bring them into the work into the process. So here we've actually invited Intel so that they can do the production part approval process for this component here, right? So we're asking them level 2 submission. So an industry standard, some of the industries have a very prescribed way of doing certain things. You can also implement them. We are implementing some of the industry standards, but if you have a variation of that, you can easily design it and use them within your organization and the supply chain. So with that, I'll pause and open up the session for Q&A. There was a question about how do we go about developing a QMS manual. The QMS manual, obviously, something that you have to definitely define, right? What are the different elements that are relevant for your organization? How much should you do it? How you should do it? That is something that you still have to do as an organization. Okay. What the solution is doing is really implementing the QMS manual as a living, breathing workflows, right? So you don't have to rely on a document anymore. People will be following this workflow as a cross-functional team and practicing what you have written in the QMS manual. The QMS manual still needs to be, especially if you're starting off as a new organization or you're trying to get accreditation or getting audited, right? The first time accreditation, right? So you have to still do that as an organization outside of, but the QMS manual itself can be completely implemented as complete digital workflows here. How are supplier users' rights administered? Okay, do suppliers require a separate license to access? Yeah, no, suppliers have a very specific role. So we have a definition, standard roles for suppliers. If you look at the existing roles, there's supplier and supplier admin. Supplier admin is someone that can actually bring in more supplier users. They have a few more capabilities than supplier participants, and they are given special roles, and they have very role-specific view, and they will participate in the workflows if they are included as a supplier participant, or if a supplier is selected as part of the workflow automatically. And that also happens quite a bit. How do you keep the workflow from becoming just a check of the box exercise? So as you have seen, the product hold area, the workflow there is actually doing all the work, right? So this is not a checkbox, because it actually connects, brings all the people, and once this workflow is completed, it is done, right? So if the workflow, it says completed, you are guaranteed, because it's connecting to SAP and moves it. It connects it to SAP and puts the hold check mark, right? It sends the Plaction emails to the people, right? And when they come in and complete the activity here, it is actually being recorded, right? So nothing is left to chance. And in addition, how is this connected to SAP, right? So we did not directly address that topic in the demonstration here. The workflow system here is connected to multiple different things, from for a lot of customer related service issues, warranty or customer service related. It's connecting to Salesforce. It brings all of those events and then kicks off different workflows for a lot of supply chain, materials management, and inventory, and POs, etc. It connects to SAP, so you can connect this workflow engine to many different systems, and using that information to either initiate connections into and perform certain transactions, or get the information and initiate workflows from there. Okay, and one more question. Can you do workflows for non-quality events such as preventative actions, PFMEA? Yes. So we actually have a whole section on design quality and manufacturing quality, right? So if you're thinking of design quality, DFMEA, or process FMEA, or process flow, we have tools that people use. For example, if I look at this process flow, this is a unified system, which is what the automotive and aerospace organizations have adopted, where from the process flow, you're designing the failure modes and the control plan that are there, right? That are being set up. So it's a connected, what we call linked system here. Similarly, if you're just interested in PFMEA, or DVPNR, you can use any of those tools to risk assessments, all of those preventive, what we call assurance tools, quality design quality tools, right? So they're all available here. Okay, so coming back to please feel free to keep typing. We'll keep the session open for a few more minutes after at the top of the hour. So one of the things that we have seen, the results of this approach, it's dramatically different from and more effective than anything we have seen as what companies practice as quality management process, is that most definitely all the right people are involved at the right time as part of the workflows. And its ability to connect to different systems, follow a designed workflow, which you can define, by the way, based upon your QMS manual procedures, processes, and connect to the systems. Everything is in sync. And you've seen the examples of different quality events kicking off quality issue workflows, which kick off corrective preventive actions and everything, right? The smooth handoff is something that is already designed, or you can design it. And the ability to include supply chain participants directly in the workflows is another major advantage, that there is no break in the process, and they are just as equally effective as your internal cross-functional teams. Okay, so with that, what we'll do is close out this session if there are no more questions. and give you the opportunity, if you would like to try the solution or you would like to do a pre-pilot based upon your existing QMS, you can feel free to reach out to us. You will get the recording and the presentation once Zoom releases the recording. We'll send it out as soon as we get it. And if you have any questions, please feel free to send us a note. Our contact information is in the presentation. And we would like to take this opportunity to thank you again for taking 1 hour of your very valuable time in the morning on Thursday and joining us today. Thank you again.